Professor, just give us some context here into exactly what's happened. As you've heard, Liz Truss is the shortest serving UK Prime Minister in history, just 44 days in office. Was this an inevitable end for the Prime Minister in your view?
It probably was. Liz Truss arrived in office with low expectations about her ability to perform as Prime Minister, and she failed to live up to those. She became Prime Minister at a time of severe economic crisis, rising inflation. She had to deal with the problem of rising gas and electricity costs, but she launched a disastrous budget strategy of cutting taxes without reassuring the markets that there would be the revenue eventually to cover any gap. So the black hole in the accounts exposed the British economy to the confidence of the markets, and she lost a lot of faith, a lot of trust as a result of her reckless behaviour, really, with the public finances.
And what we've seen is a Trumpian level of chaos playing out in the UK as a result, the political instability also gripping asset markets. Professor, in your view, what happens next now? Of course, Conservative lawmakers have to reach 100 votes within the party before they move on to the next round of voting. And we could, of course, get a new Prime Minister by as soon as Monday. Who are the likely frontrunners, in your opinion?
There is three obvious candidates for the leadership. One, of course, is Rishi Sunak, who came second in the recent contest to Liz Truss. The other character who may do very well is Penny Mordaunt, who narrowly missed going forward to the party membership in the last ballot. She's very popular amongst the party faithful. And there is always the possibility that the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson may return. But the rules require 100 MPs to support the candidacy. And Boris Johnson, when he left office, had left office because he'd lost the confidence of much of the parliamentary Conservative Party. He didn't lose office just simply because he was involved in scandals relating to parties held during lockdowns. He lost a lot of support because he appointed as his deputy chief whip an individual who was known to be a sexual predator. He denied having known that this person was a sexual predator and went on to appoint him, and then sent out his ministers to defend the appointment, causing great embarrassment when it was revealed that Boris Johnson knew a great deal about the person he was appointing. So he lost the confidence of his parliamentary colleagues before, and it's very difficult to see how he could re-establish it. He has a great deal of popularity amongst party members and some voters, but his popularity, I think, can be overstated. In opinion polls taken in the months running up to his election, he was not a terribly popular Prime Minister. And I think it'd be a remarkable, not unimaginable in the circumstances, comeback, but it would be a remarkable comeback if he were to emerge as leader. The general consensus is that if it goes out to the party membership, if he does get the 100 nominations and he is one of the two figures who goes out to the ballot of party membership, then he may well win. And that's why I think the barrier of 100 nominations has been raised so high in order to deter that possibility.
A week is a long time in politics and anything can happen, particularly when it comes to Boris Johnson, so watch that space. Professor, at a more broader level though, of course the Conservatives have the majority, but do they really have a mandate to govern? You've heard this week the polls showing that Labor is now basically 30 points ahead, and another Prime Minister chosen by the party just doesn't really pass the public smell test.
It doesn't. We generally say in response to questions such as this that the constitutional position is very, very simple. We have a parliamentary democracy, and as long as a Prime Minister enjoys the confidence of the House of Commons, there is no requirement for a general election. That is a very simple constitutional rule, and that will be unaltered. The political pressure for a general election is quite high, even amongst some Conservatives who feel that replacing a Prime Minister yet again means that they've lost their mandate. But I think the major opposition parties probably don't want to become the government at this time, and are probably quite happy to let the new Conservative Prime Minister and the new Chancellor try and deal with all these terrible economic problems, because in the short term at least, things can only get worse in terms of the British economy. And that's why I think for all the bluster, for all the demands for a general election, I think the major opposition party may be quite relieved that the Conservative Party, knowing full well that they're likely to be really badly defeated in the general election, are unlikely to call the general election in these circumstances.
When it comes to the overall asset market reaction, what traders are looking out for is signs of stability. Whoever leads the UK next is going to have to offer that. What is going to be the first order of business for whoever becomes Prime Minister?
I suspect that whoever becomes Prime Minister will have to keep the current Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, in his position. He's successfully reassured the markets with his policy decisions in the last few weeks. And I think keeping that individual at the Treasury to ensure some continuity will help stabilise the markets. But also I think the Prime Minister needs to signal her or his personal commitment to ensuring stability and governing in a more orthodox Conservative manner. Liz Truss's tax cuts were unfunded. They really spooked the markets. The scope and size of them were almost unprecedented, the largest tax cuts since 1972. So whatever happens, I think the Conservative leader needs to return to some very basic policies that the Conservative Party have held, of financial prudence and ensuring that inflation is kept low and that the public finances have a degree of control that they've not really had in the last 3 or 4 months.